Billionaires, should they exist? How should they be taxed? Are there enough tax? How should the world work? There's a lot of debate going on at the moment with billionaires in the news, and the likes of Elon Musk and other billionaires in the space of technology, where we've seen net worths grow into the hundreds of billions. Now I think Elon Musk is sitting around 250 billion in a net worth, and we've seen 300 billion in the last few months. So with all this in the news and the politics involved and the debates and claims around billionaires, taxation, and should they be paying more tax, do they pay enough tax, I wanted to chuck in with my 2 cents, my thoughts, my feelings around billionaires, the taxation of billionaires. So hopefully it'll give you a fresh new perspective, some different ideas, and may even change your mind a little bit about billionaires. So stick around and watch to find out. And of course, if I am providing value to you, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And tell all your friends about this channel. Thank you. In my opinion, billionaires are in fact assets to humanity. Now, we are kind of boxing in a set group of people. There's something like 3,000 billionaires on Earth. And with that, you've got 3,000 different personalities, different traits, different ways that they generated or accumulated or acquired their wealth. And so I want to avoid the whole assumption of putting people into a box to say, right, because they come under this category, therefore they're all the same. Everyone's different. Billionaires are all different. Same with poverty, same with middle class. There are nice billionaires, there are terrible billionaires, there are horrible billionaires, there are pleasant, there are unpleasant. They're people. But I want to give my 2 cents around the nature of billionaires and try and be as fair and diplomatic as I can in describing it. I'm sort of looking here and thinking on the lines of like benevolent billionaires. I see a billionaire as having a social responsibility along with philanthropic duties as a service to humanity when you accumulate that vast sum of wealth. You sort of have a social duty on a global scale to help look after the world and see it become a better place due to that wealth that you've accumulated. Because once you accumulate that level of wealth into the billions, you then get to a point where you're managing capital. When you've got a wealth of money that no one human can spend in their lifetime. If you were to be given £1 billion, or to be a billionaire, say you've been given £2 billion, you could buy yourself Millionaires Row in your town. Buy up every mansion, get yourself a nice big mansion, get all your friends, all your family their own mansion, get your dog their own little mansion at the bottom of your mansion on your land. You could then have a private jet, fly yourselves out on holiday, go to all these fancy holidays every month of the year, get everyone a nice fancy car, obviously a Tesla, to sit in their big fancy garage, maybe even 2, and you could still not spend that money in your lifetime. So this is why I put the perspective of becoming a billionaire. You are then managing capital. It's not as such, and a lot of billionaires don't have that wealth. While they have accumulated that wealth, it's their net worth. It's not money they have to hand. But once you have got that level of money and wealth, you therefore have a responsibility in how it's managed, in the same sense that you sort of become your own individual corporation, and in the sense that we all pay taxes and the government takes that tax in and gets the billions or trillions, whatever it is, to then look after your country and invest that money, spend that money in a way that should benefit and help all those within the society as well as those around in neighbouring. As an individual with that wealth, this is where I said in my first point about billionaires having that obligation to society to have that impact as well. But then as a billionaire, obviously you can use it greedily, or you can use that level of wealth to invest, diversify, and see where you can make improvements on the planet. A lot of the services we all know and love that we use on a daily basis, quite oftentimes we have got a billionaire to thank for that. Pretty much all of the Western world has benefited from the service of AWS from Amazon. And no doubt many millions of us obviously are benefiting from one-click, next-day delivery on almost any product you can think of. Billionaires have also been responsible for the likes of Tesla, or Elon Musk running Tesla. So again, you've got some multi-billion, a centenarian billionaire. But yet that wealth is being put to accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy, being the reason that globally car manufacturers are moving to EVs. No, it wasn't GM as much as Biden says it was. But Tesla's been responsible for pushing the entire world electric, moving us towards sustainable energy, produces more energy than what the cars consume, as well as transforming the software behind it. Other Musk companies are creating globally accessible internet, benefiting neurological brain diseases, and all sorts of more. So this is an example of someone with a vast sum of wealth that's utilising it and putting it away, and yet is being accused of avoiding tax despite having a personal tax income bill this year of somewhere in the region of $15 billion, a number that, according to records, has never been paid by an American in the history of taxation. Mental. One key thing, when we're talking about billionaires and looking at their wealth, and you often see things like every year on Black Friday, oh, Jeff Bezos made 20 billion in one weekend, or like with the recent roller coaster that Tesla stock has been on, Elon Musk has made 100 billion or has added 200 billion to his net worth in the last year, and he's made this, and it's sort of, news portrays it in a way that they've made this money and they've got it sat there, and then we'll be like, oh yes, and here's the tax they paid. They don't pay any tax. They've got this money, it's in their hand, it's in their bank, and yet they pay no tax on it. When we think of billionaires, and when we look at billionaires and analyse billionaires, we're looking at their net worth, and yet as like normal people, when we talk to each other about money, we're talking about our wages, we're not talking about our net worths. So if you're a normal person with a salary, you're then, the news is painting this picture of comparing our own incomes and looking at that pay slip and what that taxation, that you get that number coming in every month, but then there's this number that's quite large that is a big minus in front of it, that's the deduction from your salary to say this is what you're paying in tax. Not only that, then when you have paid your tax, you then buy products that are taxed, and then when you die you give money away and that's tax. So a lot of tax. It's very easy to portray an image where we look at billionaires and go, they don't pay enough in tax or their fair share. But when you consider this and compare it to your own net worth, it becomes a bit different. And so, yes, for a lot of billionaires, they don't have a salary as such, or their salary is very minimal because they're controlling money in a different way, and it opens up different doors. Especially seeing, or for myself, going from being employed at one point to then being a self-employed individual, and then going to a company director, and you see how the money works and how the rules of money change in that time. And to get to a level where you are managing billions, you are worth billions, you've done that by providing to humanity. You've provided an exceptional service, as I touched on with AWS or with Tesla, or pretty much if you're driving a car, you've got a billionaire to thank for that. The fact that we have these buildings we live in, we've got a billionaire to thank for that. The fact, or multiple billionaires, the fact that we go along in trains or planes, there's a billionaire to thank for that somewhere, running a company worth billions. And it's because they provide so much value to society. But as with anything, you're putting people in a box in this category. There's 3,000 or so billionaires on Earth, and with that, you're gonna have all sorts of different people. There's people that have acquired wealth in different manners of ways, and yes, there are some that have just got the silver spoon. They were born into wealth. They're worth billions because their family's worth billions, or through greed, through monopolization. But there are also billionaires that aren't recognised, that have built their worth, worked their absolute arse off to acquire that level of wealth, to provide such value to society that therefore, as a result, society has rewarded them, their company, the company's then worth billions. And it's not just because they've been an overlord tyrant that's extrapolating every last ounce of energy from their employees to slave them away. There are companies that are paying great wages, that are seeing their employees' wealth grow with the company as it develops and expands. And as a result, you've got a community of people that are all doing well from the company. But yes, as the largest stakeholder, you will find that there will be billionaires at the top that are running it. Doesn't necessarily mean that everyone down below is suffering. There are a lot of examples of that, I will admit though. But this is where I'm talking up. There are different people, and there's billionaires that are worth it and billionaires that, or in my opinion, have done a lot and they've given so much value to society that yes, they reap the rewards. And as a result, but this is where we're talking about them being in a position of managing capital, and that capital is being utilised to further benefit society. And by paying a tax bill, a gargantuan tax bill to the government, all we're going to find is that who's going to better utilise that capital? Would the individual be able to better utilise it if they're investing in or building companies that are helping society move forward, or help cure diseases, or find new ways to produce energy more environmentally friendly? Or is it going to be better off in the hands of the government, who are going to spend it in a different way that may not be so efficient or beneficial? Unrealised gains is a subject I want to come on as well. There's a lot in the media, and like Elon Musk tweeted out about this when he proposed selling 10% of his stake in Tesla, about a bill proposing to tax billionaires for unrealised gains. Unrealised gains being profits we haven't seen. So if you buy a house and that property value goes up by 100 grand, that is profit, but it's an unrealised profit. It's an unrealised gain. Whereas once you sell it, it becomes realised because you've got that cash to hand and you've liquidated, you've exited the deal. Same with if you buy stock and shares. If you buy them, they go up in value, you've got a huge profit there, but it's an unrealised gain until you sell. So the proposal is to tax billionaires based on these unrealised gains. So if stocks, shares, companies, properties they own go up in value, the proposal is to tax them based on that. The only way you would be able to pay that tax is to then start selling off your asset. If you become a billionaire through owning one company and your company does really well and as a result you're a billionaire, to be taxed on your unrealised gains would mean that you would have to start selling off your company in order to pay the tax bill that comes with it, because it's unrealised. You haven't got that money, you're just worth it because you own a stake in the company that has been worth that vast sum. It's a concept I disagree with. Yes, it's only been proposed for the top 0.001% of earners or something, but that will trickle down, no doubt, and in time, the same way that income tax did. The income tax was introduced, I can't remember what year, but as something only to the wealthy to help the government in funding improvements to society, and yet that just trickled down over time to where now it doesn't matter what your job is. Well, unless you're earning, less than 12,000, you will be taxed. Put this concept into your own mind. With like the recent surge in house prices, if you find that your net worth is in the hundreds of thousands and you have one property and then another property you rent out, let's say, if those properties between them had increased by £250,000 because of such surges in price increases, then on your tax bill that year would see profits, £250,000 on asset appreciation, and therefore here's your tax bill. You would then be taxed on that appreciation, on that unrealised gain. How are you going to pay the profits on £250,000 profit when you haven't realised it? It's just your asset has appreciated, so therefore you would have to sell the asset and pay the tax. Or another situation, yes, you may think, you have to be in quite a lucky position to own a property. But what if you are someone just has one home you live in that you own with a mortgage, you have a car on a drive, but you have a family heirloom. That family heirloom, let's say, is a diamond necklace, and for whatever reason, in 1 year, diamonds surge in value because of high demand, and yet the supply of diamonds is so limited and restricted due to lack of access or struggles in manufacturing, supply shortages. We've recognised that in a lot of industries. And so if you have a diamond necklace, a family heirloom, and it's worth £100,000, but suddenly with this surge, everything's gone up, it's 100x, it's now worth £10 million, there would then be a tax on that unrealised gain, as the profit there is in excess of 9 million, so therefore you have to pay the tax. You get the tax bill through, and then that's your profits realised, so then you have to sell that item because you're a person with a home that's got a family heirloom. Therefore you sell your family heirloom because you can't afford to pay the tax bill. But what happens if your tax bill comes through? You therefore have to sell the heirloom, but then by that time the market's rebalanced and that necklace is no longer worth what it was before, and so therefore you've sold it at a loss and you've got to pay this tax bill you can't afford. You'd be bankrupt instantly. So unrealised gains is a very tricky area to walk down, try and force taxation. When you think about this, what would happen to Elon Musk, for example, owning 20% of Tesla? If there was a taxation on unrealised gains, all that would happen every year as the company grows, the stock increases, he's going to be paying his tax bracket something like 58%. So every year he's going to be slapped with that 58% tax bill. Year after year, his percentage is just going to go down to the point where he has no control and no say in Tesla because he's lost so much of his holdings that he's then no longer got any stock left, and that he'll find that he's worth next to nothing by the end of it within probably a short space of a decade. Again, when we're talking about billionaires, we're talking about a vast different level of wealth. I appreciate that. They're very different things. And then the key I want to focus on is that allocation of capital management, and what is this individual doing with that capital? If you have got people that are impacting society in such a way that is benevolent, then it makes sense for them to have that money. But as well, the way that it's taxed, the way that billionaires manage their money, these are all rules that we can all play by. We all have those same set of rules. It's just many of us are employed. We all have the option and the opportunity. It may be argued there isn't the option, there isn't the opportunity, but generally, if you can put yourself in the position, chances are if you can get yourself a job, you can start a business and you can work around that. So the options are there for you to play the rules that life gives us. And so if you are playing a game of football, if one person decides to have a smaller goal goal than you, and suddenly you've got to defend this massive goal there, and your team's shooting into this tiny little box goal that you can barely get the ball in. If it's all playing by the rules, then don't moan that the opposing team's got a tiny goal when you've got a larger goal, when you could just choose to use a small goal. What are your goals in life? Do you want to change and find a way to build wealth through companies rather than individually as an employee, with where you are taxed at source? Unfortunately, as an employee, you're taxed at the wage. As a company, you're not taxed, or as a company director, you're not taxed at that point, or you'll pay your VAT, pay your corp. But there's different ways to move things around and manipulate money. And I agree with any legal manipulation of tax. I mean, the system's there, it's set up. We could have a long old debate of, is it right, is it set up correctly, is it prejudiced for some people compared to others? Yes, there are a lot of things like that. And especially if you've got a global company and you can start to manipulate global markets and move money around, as you've probably heard so many stories about different companies, I won't name any, moving money around and managing their books in different ways so that they never pay tax in any country, because they just manipulate in a way that either the funds, the books are all created in a way that they can move money around so that they avoid tax anywhere. Legally, when you've got the situation like with Jimmy Carr a couple of years ago, he was on Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO recently, where he was speaking about his whole taxation issue. But this again was all legal manipulation of his tax return, all of which he admits that he wasn't quite aware of, and it was just down to his accountant. His accountant had some ideas that went through it and went for it, and yet he ended up with terrible being annihilated in the news for it and for all his tax manipulation. It was a devastating story, and yet he was just sort of following the instructions and guidance of his accountant. But all legal moves that we can all do. We can all perform these tricks with our money on tax returns by law. Additionally, a lot of billionaires will put their money, billionaires will live very extravagant lives, but a lot of the time their money will be put, and like a lot of the wealthy will put their money in appreciating assets, and a lot of normal people will put their money into depreciating liabilities. Oftentimes, when you're building wealth, you look at finding ways to make your money work for you and put your money into assets that will pay you dividends or pay you returns or see that value increase before you buy those liabilities, that car, that jewelry, those new clothes. Find a way to build those assets so that they can fund, and it's not based on your income that needs to fund that. And as well as a company, you can start to put things through. You can have a company car, a company phone, company uniform, all these things you can put through that, therefore, as an employee, you don't have to pay a tax on your income and then buy those things. As a company, you can purchase those things and avoid taxation in that way. Again, all legally. The opportunity is there for all of us as such. My judgment on billionaires, I think if they are a benevolent billionaire, providing value to society, utilising their wealth, their capital to grow companies, investments that are benefiting us in different ways, whether it's curing diseases, increasing mobility, transportation, or helping the environment especially, then brilliant. And if they don't take an income for that and they don't reap the rewards, or they can find ways to reap the rewards without an income, again, if it's legal, I agree to it. If it's illegal, I disagree with it. And if you are a billionaire running a corporation that provides tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs to society, good paying jobs with great benefits, with a kind, welcoming, warming structure that people enjoy the work they do, they feel fulfilled, they feel cared for, and amazing. And that the value provided to society there, the tax that will be paid in VAT for every product sold, every product bought, every employee. As an owner of that company or owners, you are responsible for that. You're managing that. You're curating that. You're the choreographer to that dance that is building this global empire to provide so much value to society. But can we remove billionaires? Could we have a world without them? In my opinion, no. We couldn't have a capitalistic world without billionaires. We would see a global collapse. Global infrastructures would just fall everywhere. And as I mentioned, if you wanted to remove billionaires through taxing unrealised gains, you would there, as I mentioned, like with Elon Musk with his Tesla shares growing so much and the profits, unrealised profits being there, he would be forced to sell his stake and end up with such a minimal stake in Tesla, he'd have no control, no say, and who would the shares go to then? And bearing in mind, as an individual, we can only afford to buy some of the shares, and it just flood the market with shares, and you'd see company values just fall and collapse. It's a complicated thing to comprehend and put your mind around, the idea of removing billionaires from society through taxation, the idea that if your wealth grows to a certain point, you then start paying 99% tax on unrealised gains once you hit $1 billion or something, to bring that back down. But to bring it back down, it's a complicated issue. Do you think you could do it? How would you do it? I think it'd be a bad thing for society, and I think billionaires play a key role. While I think we want to have a mix of people, I agree with the idea of having a mix. I don't agree with the idea of people living in poverty, but I don't think it's something to shine a light and to put a blame into those at the top and say, well, if we can have people worth hundreds of billions, how is it we've got people that are starving and living on the streets? I disagree with the idea of that. I can't believe, I find it hard to fathom that we are in 2021 and there are people that are homeless, hungry, living on the streets, unable to feed themselves. I feel there needs to be a way to solve this issue. There are ways to solve it. It's tricky, it's complicated, but it can be done. But the idea that there shouldn't be these at the top if there's people down here, I think there should be a responsibility of someone at the top to work on that, but you can't solve every problem on earth. You could, well, going back to Twitter and Elon Musk, there was the tweet of, Elon Musk could give away 2% of his wealth and he would be able to cure world hunger at a cost of $6 billion. Elon Musk responded, show me the paperwork that proves exactly how it could be achieved and I'll sell my shares and you'll have the money. And suddenly it was then a head scratcher of, actually maybe we couldn't. Giving someone that responsibility, like the dude's already accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy, curing brain diseases with Neuralink, creating a future world where humans are multiplanetary through SpaceX, fixing the problems of traffic globally with the Boring Company. To say you now need to fix all these other problems, I think would be a bit too much work for one person to do, given that he doesn't socialise and works 7 days a week and doesn't take holidays. But it is a complicated issue, I appreciate, but final closing statement of yes, I think billionaires can be a brilliant asset to society as long as they are motivated by benevolent philanthropic endeavours to help the world and not consume based on greed. There are many millionaires that are incentivised by greed, but you can't introduce a tax for someone that's greedy. That'd be interesting. I hope this has been valuable. I hope this shit is giving you a good light and hopefully you can kind of understand where I'm coming from here. So I agree with billionaires. I agree there's bad billionaires, there's good billionaires, but overall, I think they're quite an asset to society. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below and hit the subscribe, like. Thank you.